Welcome everyone. We're here on the Ananda Rose channel. I'm Kirsty, not Rose, and I'm just popping in with the Neurodiversity Controversy segment. And I have with me here the amazing Miss Aiyanna Lesley Dixon, also known as the Fairy Queen Aiyanna, because why not? And so Aiyanna does a lot of things. She's an amazing sand artist. She's a visionary and a creator of sacred space. And she also, and this is everything will come into play, but one of the main reasons I invited her on the channel is she also has an incredible heart for children, as well as finding the inner child in all of us actually, and connecting with that. And she's off and on worked as a teacher aide in various different scenarios. And I know from chatting to her and just from the way that she is, that she has some incredible heartfelt stories and learnings to share about our amazing children, our sensitive children, our quirky children, and whether they have a diagnosis or not. Our neurodivergent children, however we name them, whether they're star seeds or sensitives or neurodivergent, these children have a lot to bring and a lot for us to learn from. So welcome, Aiyanna. Lovely to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for asking me. It's nothing more delightful for me than to be here in the space supporting I call them our sensitive children, but at the end of the day, we're all our sensitive children, aren't we? I mean, we are that sensitive child as well, you know. And so I find often when I talk with people about these things that often there's a lot of truth comes through for, you know, the adults, you know, and sometimes just that being not acknowledged themselves as being that sensitive child is something that maybe they never have been in their lifetime, you know.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think it's a really important part of the equation, that connection to our own precious hearts, really.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. And so I have lots of questions for you, but is this a good time for you to bring in your flute before I start yabbering away?
It sure is. It sure is. I was just thinking, because my door's open, but the other door's just been shut now, and the dog's been and gone and come and checked everything out. So everything's all good. I mean, animals come in clear spaces, don't they? You know, so that's a beautiful.
The cats just come to the side of me now, but yeah.
Cats especially that sit on people's computers or whatever, you know, they feel the energy, you know, which is really lovely. And this flute I play is I only learned it maybe 4 years ago or something. And I grew up, you know, never playing an instrument because I couldn't read music, you know, and you know, when you play a recorder, like, and you can't play it properly, it sounds terrible. Whereas the flute only has like 6 keys, so it's really 6 notes, so it's really easy to play. And this particular one, I travel with it wherever I go around the world, and it's the key of G, and so it's a really beautiful note that I find really calms people, and not just people but animals as well, and particularly dogs. When I'm house sitting at people's houses, I play my flute to the animals, you know. And so, I mean, a story just before I start playing it that I wanted to share was a neurodivergent child, one of our sensitive children, who was, you know, unfortunately one of those children dragged into school, you know, didn't want to go in, and you know, they had him in this room and with 2 adults, and you know, obviously there'd been some background around it all, but I just felt sick just felt sick seeing this child, hearing him so distressed. And I was like, what can I do? And so I went and sat on the couch outside the room and just started playing my flute. And as I played my flute, I could hear the adults getting calmer. I could hear their voices getting lower. I could hear them saying less and less words. And so, of course, that's they did. So did this child, calm himself down because he was only reacting to their energy, And I think that that's really important piece, key piece is, to really remind ourselves that this is our stuff, it's our stuff, and how we react, how we show up for these children is a big part of what happens next,
Mm. Mm. Yeah.
So anyway, I play my flute, so here we go.
It didn't come through very much, but
Oh.
it came through a little bit and I could feel the energy of it. So we might have to try again with the flute another time. Yeah. But even though I couldn't hear it very well, I still loved it.
Oh, cool. Well, there's a frequency, isn't it? I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know about my cat. She gave me a little bite before. I'll say it was playful aggression. The bite wasn't during the flute though, so yeah.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to share that piece anyway. That just obviously came through for me to share about that boy, but I think that's really important, isn't it? Because that's why we're here showing up like we are, because we don't want that to happen for these children, We want them to be able to be seen and understood, and heard.
Yeah. And often, as you said, our energy is a big piece of it. And it's always harder when you're, maybe the parent, the main caregiver, someone who's been in a stressful situation with a child for a long time. It's always harder, even if on the surface you're calm, it's always harder to be very regulated. And so, when we talk about, kids reacting to our stuff, that's in no way kind of shaming parents who are like at their wits' ends, or caregivers, or because, I've been there. I've absolutely been there. And this is despite the fact that, most of my mum friends would be like, you're so calm. And I'm like, yeah, I am, but not always. And then there's always stuff underneath. That's why it's always an opportunity to bring stuff to the surface. So it's very complex. And then there's an additional factor of the child having their own journey. So even if sometimes if you're super, super calm, they're still going to have stuff going on. So it's this really, and you still can then be in control of how you respond. So it's this really fascinating and complex interplay of energies and emotions. But just kind of circling back, tell me a little bit about, how you initially came into working as a teacher aide, and maybe what that was like when you first started out.
Yeah, sure. I first started when my children were at school, and my children are nearly all in their 30s now. I've got 3 of them. And so I've always loved children. I love having lots of children around. We always had lots of children at our house, and so it just seemed the obvious thing to do. It meant that I didn't have to work in the school holidays, and I didn't want to send my children to school holiday things. I mean, they weren't around like they were now, but even then I love the holidays, so it just fitted in for me, and it's always nice to be around the schools, like get to know more people and everything. And so, yeah, I mean, then the boy I was with was he had alcohol fetal syndrome, and so that was very new and very I guess explosive kind of behavior, but we were fine, and one day I had some of the other teacher aides say to me, actually, oh, God, you're so lucky with that boy, you know, like it's so easy, you know, like, you know, blah, blah, about these children that they were with. And I was like, really? And at the time I was actually doing a PMP, something motor program, forgot the first word. And I was doing marching and stuff with the kids. And so I took all their children and they had my boy. And I did this perceptual motor program. And so it was a lot of crossovers, a lot of, crossing your
Midline.
pathways.
Yeah.
Yeah, midline. Yeah, thank you. And eye tracking and things like that. And they loved it. And from that happening, we ended up practicing to the song Men in Black. Nod your head, you know, nod your head. And we ended up being on stage for the Christmas assembly, you know, like so and my heart was so full, Kirsty, to give these children who were never the children were picked, never, ever, ever, you know, and to see them up on stage. I was so proud of them. That day, the principal came up to me and he said to me, I hope this is going to be of an acceptable standard. And I said to him,
wow.
I wouldn't do that to these children. Of course it's going to be. I would never do that to these children. And I was like, wow. Wow. But it was seeing the delight on their faces and hearing their parents cheer when they, you know, got on stage and were singing or pretending to sing and do the worm, you know, the break dancing thing and all of that. It was fantastic. I walked away there so full and thinking, wow, if this is the biggest achievement in my life, this is it. Like, it doesn't get any better than this, you know.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. It's so cool.
Yeah.
And
But
just
it's fine,
having
you know, that's what we are, right? We're advocates for these children. We absolutely 100%, you know, as a mother, as a father, and also as a teacher aide, you are 100% an advocate for these children.
Yeah. And it's such a precious gift to have someone like you in their corner, and, you know, believing in their ability to do whatever it is, in this case, that performance. But there's, you know, there's all sorts of options there in terms of, you know, seeing something bigger for them than they imagine for themselves, or than other people imagine for them, like the grumpy principal. You know, bless his pointy little head. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, he was a good man. He was obviously feeling under pressure from somebody else, I presume, probably. But I was so proud of myself standing up to him, because I was just like, no, you don't get to say that to me. You don't get that. I would never do that to these children, never, you know. And they were just so excited to get that opportunity, because so often, right, that you know, for whatever reason, you know, that anxiety that can come with a whole lot of any of this, and it is enough to just stop the children from putting their hands up, or, you know, saying I'd like to have a go or whatever. And so it's seen as a non-participation, when that's not what it is at all, you know.
Yeah, that anxiety can be such a powerful piece of the equation. And so I suppose for people who don't know much about the school system, or when a child would have a teacher aide, obviously it's when they require a certain amount of assistance, and there's various thresholds for meeting criteria for that. But in a general sense, what are the kind of kids who require a teacher aide? What are some of the maybe behavioral expressions or diagnoses, or reasons why they are eligible, I suppose, for assistance and support?
Well, it's changed in the, you know, like 30 years I've been doing it off and on. I mean, I love it. I love it. It is something that I am very good at, but also it's been something that's been paid poorly over the years, and and we've never got paid in the school holidays. So it's a job that, you don't get paid for 10 weeks a year, and so it's actually not a livable income, so that becomes a big part of, well, for me anyway, why I've traveled in and out of being a teacher aide. But I think it's been good for me because I've done other things in between and come back. But yeah, nowadays definitely it's harder and harder. It's never been easy, I don't think, to get a teacher aide. But generally for children with an autistic diagnosis or an ADHD, I mean, unfortunately, it often comes with the child who's most disruptive, for this purpose of this conversation, because that has such an impact on the rest of the classroom. So that's kind of where I see it. Possibly, children with Down syndromes. That's another, or child in a wheelchair needing special assistance. They're generally the places that teacher aides are called in for. You're funded for a certain amount of hours, not many, like maybe 10, 5 a week or something, with that particular child. But of course, you become the extra person in the classroom, and so and it's good. Generally, I think it's good for the other children because you might have a group, and because that can be some of the biggest piece or the hardest challenge sometimes for children is to actually work alongside another child, so so that's some, generally how it works. You might have at least one buddy with them doing something together, and so working on those social behavior cues, which are quite big often, especially in those younger years, sort of, especially definitely up to 8 and even after that. So
yeah. And so I'm sure, that's nice that you get kind of other children involved sometimes as well. Perhaps children on the periphery, because I'm sure you see, as you said, it's the most disruptive children, the children with the most obvious struggles, who officially are the ones who get a teacher aide. And then there'll be the children who kind of fall through the cracks, who are really struggling, but it's less obvious, or they're really struggling, but they're doing it quietly, or like they're a ball of anxiety, but they just kind of chug along. So I'm sure you become quite aware of those dynamics.
Oh, definitely. And particularly if you're in a class with a particular child, you really get to know those other children in those classrooms a lot. I mean, I was generally a teacher aide who went to lots of different things, and in the last 2 schools that I was in, I actually ran my own program based on sand, working with sand with children. So outside in the long jump at schools, that would be the big sand pit. I would work with children, and then I also had little trays, like kitty litter trays, that I would bring the magnetic sand from Muriwai Beach in Auckland, and we would have those trays with magnets in them, and have little things for children to pour, or sometimes little sticks so it can make birthday cakes if it was somebody's birthday, or but a lot of it was general in those groups. It'd normally be 4 children and we'd have our little trays and we'd be creating whatever, and so that would be a conversation piece. That's how I ran that. That was conversation just on what they were creating, or what was going on their world that day, or I'm really it's really important to me to what's happening right now, what's presenting right now, as opposed to having some kind of plan that we're going to make this blah 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 blah. I am definitely here in the here and now, and what's happening. And if somebody says, oh, John's birthday today, and I'm like, well, let's make John a birthday cake and sing him happy birthday, like, and so that language stuff and those social cues and all of those things come through quite easily in those spaces, I found.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. I mean, in the here and now is the only way to be, really.
Mm.
And
Mm.
children are great for that.
Yes, yes,
Because it's,
they
often, best laid plans, as they say, if you have an amazing idea about something that you think they would like,
are.
probably just don't waste your energy on that, because
Yeah.
as you say, it's much more likely that if you just go with the flow, things will arise, and it will be
Mm, mm,
much
mm.
more organic, and they'll be more invested in it.
Yeah.
And not all children who, you know, need assistance or who are neurodivergent are what we call demand avoidant, but actually quite a lot are. So if there's a pressure, even if it's very subtle or
Mhm,
subconscious,
mhm.
that this is the way I'm expecting it to go, or this is the way I want it to go, and I'd really prefer it if you did it this way, even though I'm pretending I don't mind.
Mm, mm.
They can pick up on that so easily, can't they? And it's
Yes.
so that really strong energetic awareness of your intentions and your energy. Yeah, so that kind of organic flow is incredibly helpful, I think. Mm,
Well, it's reading. We're reading energy, aren't we? Like,
yeah.
but to me, play is the most important thing. The power of play in any perspective. And I mean, one thing, because it could be people watching this and thinking, but my child doesn't like sand, and there's definitely the children that don't like that, and I find
Mm,
a lot of
it's
our neurodivergent children don't. So that's a whole nother thing. Like the teachers might think, oh, well, this will be a good thing for this child to do, but actually they don't like it. They don't want to put their hands in it. So
mm,
generally I try Play-Doh or something else like that just gave that kind of kneading um, feeling, and particularly if it was warm, if you just made it, if it was warm.
mm.
Um, yeah, yeah. Mm,
Yes,
mm,
is it? Yeah, because there's that sensory piece. And I know, for example, my younger boy, he would be all about it. He automatically always draws in the sand. He's only recently started drawing on paper, but for a long time before he would draw on paper, he would always do things in the sand, or even just, little pebbles, gravel,
mhm.
the horse arena. Often he would, miss doing quite a bit of the stuff with the horse because he just was doing his gravel art.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah. So that's very much a thing for him. And then, of course, we got him his own little sand tray for the playroom, but he doesn't really use that. The cat has used it once. So you have to be careful of this if you're going to make your kids a sand tray, because it is very much like a kitty litter tray. um, but yeah, of course, some other children, it will be some other way of getting that tactile input and expressing themselves. So it's the general
Mm.
idea rather than that it has to be sand. But yeah.
Yeah, and
Um,
and and what part of what I have as it's definitely part of my toolbox. So it's part of that program, with that. But if I'm called into a classroom where there's been a disturbance or something's happened, I take it as a tool to regulate children as well, because it's
mm,
a massive tool that I find um, that not all the time, of course, but quite often will help a child to just sit there or touch the magnets, whatever. Sometimes
mm,
they spend all day trying to take the sand off the magnets, which
mm,
is actually something that's impossible. And I might say to them, yeah, that's impossible, but that it doesn't matter. There's something about whatever that is for them to do that. But just in that doing that, it just helps them calm down. So
yeah, it definitely doesn't matter. It's just, and I love doing that with the sand and the magnets too, I must
yeah,
say. It's,
yeah,
yeah, it's very fun. Mm,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. And that, yeah. So tell me a bit more about how kids can express themselves through using, for example, sand, or for example, something else, in ways where they might have trouble verbally communicating, for example.
Uh, well, I was thinking as well as crystals. I do use crystals a lot, and so in writing, um, I just had a bag of crystals that I would have on the table with the children that I was with, and then they could just pick out a couple of crystals that they wanted to just have them on their piece of paper with them to support them. And I think that just acknowledging that sometimes we just need that something else to support us is a really beautiful thing. And in those circumstances, I use my crystals as well when I'm called into those places. I would take, and often I play uh, tunes, like binaural beat music, but have it
Mm,
like I have these silent tracks that I got off this
mm,
guy in America, and so I would have those playing when I walked into these places, which were sometimes quite explosive, where a child might be, hidden in a corner somewhere,
mm.
um, or sometimes they even have to evacuate the classroom, like so.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's I know it's called to clear classrooms afterwards, which I would do with my flute, and play music and clap and because and I think that's a really important piece as well, right? That those things happen, and everyone's affected by it,
Mm,
and
mm,
how can we clear the energy? So the principal of that school, she was really onto it. She would just give me a call and say, can you just go down to that classroom, and I know what she would mean. So yeah.
mm. Yeah, that's very true. The
Mm,
music and the frequency and rhythm as well is so powerful.
mm, mm,
Um,
mm.
and as you say,
Yeah.
helpful for everyone, not just the directly affected child, but
Mm, mm,
everyone in
mm.
in the environment. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Mm,
mean, the biggest piece in this last school I was in, which was a much smaller school, and I had a lot more parent interaction, I would say, was I asked the parents when children came in, how did the children regulate themselves?
mm,
And, Kirsty, that was the most important question I could have asked any of them. And it was so useful for me because, a parent might say, oh, my child, she gets really upset and then she goes and finds something that she climbs under, and she stays there for a while and gets a couple of sticks and plays with them and then comes out when she's ready. And so from that perspective, I could set up the classroom so that she could be supported and that child could be supported, and um, just make a little cave, I would call it,
mm,
a desk with a blanket and put it over, and if that child, and obviously she wasn't the only one who needed that anyway, and so that they could go into that place. And I think that that's really key, key in the parents understanding. And I understand that people don't always know that, and it can be lots of
mm.
different things and all of that as well, and I appreciate that. But just having something that you can help support that child with, um, I think is just is gold, absolute gold.
Yeah, that's so important. And that communication between the school and the parents, and obviously in your case you asked very directly, and it's incredibly kind of precious for a parent or caretaker to feel like you're really listening to them, and then also taking on board and applying what they've communicated, because it doesn't that follow through doesn't always happen. And so
Mm, mm,
yeah, Yeah, that's really amazing.
Mm, mm,
And so we've talked a little bit about this off camera. I'd really love to hear a bit more about some of the synchronicities in terms of the way that you turn up at a given school or with a given child, and also, the personal learnings you've had from working with children's and what it's shifted in you. Mm.
mm.
It's a big question.
Uh,
Go in it from any angle you want.
yeah. Okay. Well, I guess I guess part of that was this last school I was in. I was called in to the school. The principal was calling in a specific energy for this child, and she wanted a kind of grandmother energy. And when I turned up in my dress with my crown on, she was like, "Oh, she's here," and um, and this particular child, struggled to to leave her mum, and it had been an ongoing thing, which was really hard for everybody. And but with a change of energy, a different person in the space, within a week, I said to the mum, you could go and have a coffee or something now if you wanted to, and or just walk down to the orchard or something, and come back, and then of course, then once that opens up, then you actually see that actually the pitch is bigger than that, and that the mum or the parent might need a little bit of support as well, and finding out what that is for them, and how they need to be nurtured in that place as well, so that they actually feel safe to be able to leave their child too, which is amazing, and huge and understandable and all of those things. And so it's quite can be quite complex, but it just was such an amazing piece to, because when I started at that school, the principal and another teacher was away, so the people weren't even there, so it wasn't even about the other energies were there to support what was going on, like I was kind of there and not on my own, but with other people around. But it just changed. It just changed. And I mean, sometimes, we get tired, we run out of ideas, when, just like as a parent, it's the
Mhm.
same teachers, just that constant conflict sometimes, which was also what was going on, and with a particular child. And I was like, well, okay, what can I do with this? And so I got 2 buckets, and I got all the things that we had that they were fighting over, and I just tipped them all out in the middle. And I went, okay, you've got a bucket each, right? You put one ball in, you put one ball in, you put one car in, you put one car in. And we did it so that both of them knew they both had exactly the same thing. And then I sat there and they just played for 20 minutes without arguing. There was no
Mm.
fighting because they knew it was fair, And I think these kids have these kids coming through are really strong morals and values in them already, I believe. They know why they're here. They know, I'm not going to eat animals because that's not right, or I met a girl helping clean up the other day on the beach, and I said, oh, it's really good you're doing this. And she said, well, yeah, I don't want the animals to eat the rubbish and get sick, so she knew at 8,
Mm.
maybe she was, she knew that. I thought, how many people ask? They just assume this child's picking up rubbish because they don't want to see the litter, whereas that wasn't what it was at all, And so these children, feel they have these really, really strong values in
Mm.
them. What or maybe it's their integrity. I mean, and if it's not right for them, um, then it's not right, and they'll tell you. Um,
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It can be so strong, this very strong sense of justice, um, and this really intense questioning spirit as well, in terms of like if they see something going on, rather than just being like, oh well, they're like, but why? That doesn't seem right. Why is it like that?
Mm, mm,
You know, why are we okay with it? How can we change it? Why don't we change it? And it's, yeah,
mm,
it
mm,
is really powerful. And sometimes with, you know, the sense of fairness, it can be really infuriating because it, you know, it can come out as nitpicking.
mm,
You know, like with the, oh, it's not fair. She got more, he got more. Um, but, you know, as you demonstrated, if you get them involved in that problem solving process, rather than just being like, this is how it is, that's going to be so much more effective. And then also, if we see the essence of what's underneath it, you know, this need for fairness, yes,
mm.
it can be frustrating, it can get tiresome, and you know, the essence of it is very beautiful, and it's this quality that, you know, if they hold on to it and they learn to use it with discernment and the awareness of other people's rights and values, it's such a powerful trait to take through with them. Yeah.
Yeah, well, they're here as our teachers as well, aren't they? And so, them holding themselves in integrity really pulls us into integrity, right?
Mm.
And that's not a bad thing as well, because it happens all the time. People say one thing and mean something else, or there's one rule for one thing and another rule for another. And I find, particularly because autistic children really like rules, like because it's their way of feeling safe, and so that's why I question it a lot, because hang on, this is what happened here, but now suddenly this is happening, and it's not the same rule. Why is that? And in that within that conversation, I mean, one thing that I used to do every Wednesday morning, I think it was my turn to do a morning circle. We would have a morning circle. And so what I would do was, first of all, I would play my drum to call people in, because I'm not about yelling at children. There's lots of other ways that we can call children without needing to yell. And so I would play my drum, and everyone would gather. They knew what to do. You don't need to tell them, and we'd start off with a rhythm. So the rhythm thing, and I'd choose 3 children to clap a rhythm that we would then all clap in return. And then I would play my flute, and then I sang a song. And I don't know if you know Alison Davies, an Australian woman. She does amazing brain behaviors, she calls it. She's an autistic woman herself, and she
Yes, yeah. Hmm.
yeah, I just love her so much. And so she does a lot on, she's a music therapist, or was a music therapist. She's stepped out of that now and is doing her own thing. But one of the things she does is melodic mantras.
Hmm.
And so making up something for yourself that supports yourself. So one that I did for myself was, I take a deep breath and I feel at peace in my body. And
Mm.
so I would sing that sing that to the children. And, sometimes they would sing it, sometimes they wouldn't, but I never had an expectation. Like, to begin with, I did. And I was like, this is really working. And then I'd hear the story back, And so that a third thing. So I did sound, my drum, clapping, rhythm, my flute, which calmed them down, then singing and doing the breathing thing. And then I would also have roll on essential oils,
Mm.
some doTERRA ones, some friends have made for me, and pass them around. So when we were kind of singing that song, we'd pass them around, that the children could put them on themselves if they wanted to, or just have a smell. And then I'd try and pick
Mm.
something out of the garden as well, so herbs, so that they had the real thing to compare it to as well. But
Mm.
and that whole process was, a good 15, 20 minutes, but what an investment it was in that time. And so many of the parents would stay as well. And I just found, like, even though sometimes you think, oh, not did that work, because at the end of the day you do what you need as well, right? So
Yeah.
it supported me. But the stories I heard back from parents, one woman said, you know, her little 3-year-old, she was standing in the queue with her 3-year-old, and the mother was getting a little anxious about, I think maybe it was time for school or something to pick up the kids, and this little girl, this 3-year-old, started singing it to her, you know, I take a deep breath and I feel at peace in my body. And then, you know, another mum, you know, her son shared, she shared with me that he sang it before he went to sleep, you know, when they had that quiet time, you know, like the you know, like most children do, you know, offload at that time, just at bedtime. And then that was something that they would do together, as they would sing that song, you know, it really helped him. So, you know, I think, you know, there's a big piece for me, you know, like for the learnings for me is, you know, just to trust my heart and my intuition that it feels good, and that not to have an expectation of what that looks like or how that unfolds. But if it still feels good, and I was going to change it to a different mantra the next term, but this particular boy came in and he came in to the school singing it, and I was like, okay, no.
Yeah, I love that little routine just incorporates so much goodness and so many different opportunities for regulating, and this piece about, you know, giving tools, doing what feels good for you without having an expectation, I think is really powerful. So for example, and Alison Davies, yes, she is amazing. And I hope you weren't doing her sweary mantras in the classroom. I'm guessing not. Those might be better for parents at the end of their tether to do really quietly in the pantry. But yeah, so for example, like my children, if I give them suggestions like about, you know, breathing or like shaking, things that are super amazing, um, even if they're only a tiny bit stressed already, or maybe just because it's coming from me as their mother, they're like, ugh, no, I won't do that. If someone else suggested it, they may do. But even when children are like, no, that sounds like rubbish, it doesn't mean that they're not getting anything from it. They may still be absorbing bits of things. Because my boys are like that. And then, but at the same time, sometimes they'll come out with these incredible pearls of wisdom. I'm just like, wow. They want to just take things in on their own time and do it their way. So it's that thing of don't get discouraged if you know, give these amazing suggestions and they get shot down. Because they might.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And having all the different things definitely helped. And, you know, and I just saw the confidence in the children each week. Because I would also let them play my drum, like 3 of them could play my drum. So they play their own beat. And so confidence in them when they came through to play the drum, you know, like that was really, and the big smile on their face. And one day this boy just picked up this drum and he just drummed his heart out, and I'm all goosebumpy just thinking about him. And everyone, I just looked around the circle and everyone just was smiling. They just had such beams on their faces because he had so much joy in that moment, and just doing that and playing that drum. And I think for him, you know, like he was doing this thing that everyone else was doing, you know, like it finally came to the point, and that's the point about doing these things repetitively, you know, is it finally came to the point that he felt that he was ready to participate himself, and it was joyous. It was absolutely joyous.
Yeah, that's powerful. Like having the space to eventually join in or do something when you feel ready to is, yeah, that's actually, yeah, a huge gift. And I love the mantras and the kind of self-soothing as the parent or caregiver as well. That's incredibly helpful. And like, for example, if you have a really explosive child, a lot of parents will use something, to repeat internally, like, they're having a hard time, they're not giving me a hard time, because that intellectually, but when you're presented with it over and over and over, it's really helpful to remind yourself. Or the simple one that I used to use a lot was just, I choose love. I choose love. Or I choose not to take this personally, which is kind of the same, which is the same thing actually. Um, mm, yeah.
Yeah. As you say, in that moment, it can be very challenging. And there can be a million things, can't there, as to why it is. But one of the biggest gifts, for a parent is to be able to get a child, and I know how hard it is, a child to school, like before time, because the longer that time goes on, the more anxiety comes with it, which then gets more and more projected into whatever happens next, and Alison Davies talks about that actually. She's got things on YouTube about it, I think, specifically about that, helping it, that transition, getting from the house to the car to school, But the biggest thing is being able to give yourself enough time so they can get there earlier, so that that they're not sitting there wondering, because all of those things are going through their head, isn't it? Wondering what's going on, what have I missed, who's there, what child's there, what isn't, and whereas if they're earlier, they can kind of start processing some of that stuff instead of arriving when everyone's already sitting on the mat or in a circle or whatever.
Yeah, and it's not easy. And those transitions have always been one of the super hard things for us. And it's so much easier now. And everyone says, like, it'll get easier with time. And it does, but sometimes it takes a lot of time. And it takes a lot of really kind of hideous transitions before it starts to get smoother. So that's why, as you said, whatever you can soothe yourself with, whatever mantra, however you can create more spaciousness around things and allow that, you might need an extra 20 minutes for putting on socks, or an extra 15 minutes for getting into the car seat. And so, to be honest, that was a big reason. I had lots of reasons. That was one of the big like things where I was like, there's actually no possible way I could put my child in school because we'd never get there before 1 p.m. But obviously everyone's situation is different, and you have various degrees of severity of these things and different triggers. So
I think it's important just for people to realize that it's normal, like, as well, like
lots of other people are going through it.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes, particularly when you seem to be the only one arriving at school with a child like that, you think you're the only one, whereas it's not true at all.
That's right. And because you can feel your own stress levels as well, like you kind of stagger up to the school gate or whatever it is, the activity or play center, and you're all harassed and you've got like food on you and you haven't washed in days. And you know what, that mum over there might be exactly the same, but to you she looks, like really put together and relaxed. She could be dying inside. And so it's that, it's very easy to feel isolated, and that's it's really important to realize that, whether they're slightly different or slightly more or less, everyone has their struggles, and you're definitely not alone.
No. And wouldn't it be wonderful, like, have some kind of transition place, I think, like, because often it's all about the sensory, right? So places are so sensory, so noisy, and everything can. One boy I used to work with, I got him a big cardboard box, and he would just climb in the box, and we'd sit out in the sunshine, and he'd just be in the box, I was used to think people would think, what am I doing? Like, I'm not doing anything. I'm just sitting. It looked like I'm sitting out in the sunshine. But of course, I was holding space for him, and he just needed to just get out of all the noise, all the noise, all the sensory stuff, and so I saved that box, and it was a fantastic tool for that particular boy, and other children were keen to have a go, as well. But for him, it was the best thing, that really helped and supported him.
And just to create his own little space. Yeah. And I mean, I relate to that. And it's like, as you parent or teach or support, it's such a great opportunity to notice all of your own stuff, like why is that making me feel so upset or so angry, or to look at those kind of old patterns and conditioning. And to
Well,
and to notice like, my children were obviously kind of different from quite young, and so I was supporting them, and it was just this massive learning curve for me. And I've become much more gentle with myself, and better at communicating to other people. If, for example, I need space, or I've decided actually I can't go to that thing, even though I said I would. Or I need to, like, it's a stim. I do this a lot, and I used to not do it, or only do it when I was completely alone. And it's so cathartic to shape, like we all know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, that really helps. So
yeah. And I feel like I represent all of us in that space. Like, even in a staff meeting, I just get up after, if it's gone on for 45 minutes and we haven't moved, and I just get up and I just say, I have to move now. I'll go get a drink or water or whatever, or maybe I just need to move. But like, feel free to stand up and move, because we've all been conditioned into that, right? And so then there's that expectation that the next generation of children will do it, but no, and good on them, because I'm the person that doodles on my, in the staff meetings as well. I always doodled on my pieces of paper, and I've always done that. I've done that all my life, always. So I need to be doing something for me to listen. I need to have both of those things going at the same time. So I have a lot of, I guess, understanding and compassion for children who need to do that. But I find, that's not necessarily out there, and it's big. I have a friend who teaches all about nervous system and brain behaviors and everything. So some of Alison Davies, her name's Donna, and for me, it's just about, pardon me, if she employed you in her childcare centre or wherever, you would be the one that, are you going to look at your stuff? The children are fine. You've got to be prepared to look at your stuff, and it's a brave person to step into that. But as I've stepped into that more and more, I mean, I feel like I always have done that, because I've always been advocates for children, but I find I have to step up and say more for the children with other teachers. That can obviously can be an interesting space. But as I understand more for myself about the brains and nervous systems and all of that, I have more of an explanation that I can give to that teacher, that I'm not just saying that child is fine, that they're covered in paint. She's actually not going to go and put her hand on the wall like you think she is. She's totally in this whole enclosure place that she's just in her own world, and she's covered in bright pink paint, and she just feels fantastic.
Yeah. And
And
there's always levels of awareness with it and levels of um, courage with that advocacy and that communication as well.
that
Yeah.
was a big piece for me. But like, I knew exactly what was happening for this child, and it was beautiful. It was just beautiful, Kirsty, to
Mm.
watch her just like paint the paint on her hands, and you could see how it really felt to her, and like, oh, sensory, it was beautiful.
It's like a flow
Mm.
state, a full body experience. It's
Yes,
beautiful.
yeah, and that
Mm.
whole experience for us as a school, with everything that happened around that, became a massive learning curve for everyone, which was fantastic, but that was through me speaking up and saying, this is what was happening. And you know you know there's all these different schemas, and I don't know if people know about that,
Yeah. Mm.
or urges they're called, and different ways that children learn and feel things, and that's one of them. The cloaking, covering, whether you cloak yourself like I always do. I always have scarves and jewels around me, climb into a cave, or cover yourself in paint. It's all the same
Mm.
thing.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, enclosure, don't they? They call that one. And there's the transporters who are always moving stuff, and
Yes,
often those
yeah,
really busy boys, like my boys, it was like they've got to be moving stuff from here to
yes,
there all
yeah,
the time.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
nothing to do with the destination, you
No,
know.
it's the
It's
movement.
it's
Yeah,
about the movement. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So like, you can't say, "Oh, can't you just put it over there and leave it there?" No, because it's got nothing to do with that, you know. And I
Mm,
think that's it's as I've understood more about those urges, it certainly is helpful, because you can see it for what it is. I mean, there's a boy I've just met recently who he puts everything in his backpack and carries it around, even at
mm,
home, you know.
hmm
And it's the same thing, he's just transporting stuff with him, and that's just what makes him feel happy and feel safe. And I just
Yeah.
love that, we was totally accepted. That's just what he does, and that's exactly what it should be, right? It's just who he
Mm.
is. Mm.
Yeah, and to have the confidence to go with the flow with it, because that just reminded me that, every time we used to go anywhere in the car, for example, we'd have to take 600 items. The reminder of it made me realize that, oh, actually, we don't anymore. So these things do
They
evolve
do.
over
Yeah,
time, and especially if you just let them have that part of their developmental process.
yeah, yeah.
It's like crawling. It's not as integral as crawling, but for them, it may almost be.
Mm, mm, mm,
Mm,
mm.
mm,
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
And so I've really
Yeah.
loved hearing more about, your work with kids, because it gives me this really expanded window onto the other things you do now, like your sand creations and the way you hold space for people, the way you create rituals for people. um, yeah, it's just this much deeper awareness of how you work, and yeah, like we said at the beginning, this kind of drawing out of the inner child and the magic that's in all of us, and really allowing it. Mm. So yeah, so tell me a little bit more about your latest projects or things that are speaking to your heart now on that note.
Mm. Oh, well, thank you for bringing my sand art into it. I love it. It, I love what I do with children, and so much. But what I do in the sand is I see as my zone of genius, and I can help and support these children in that same space as well, and particularly dyslexic children, or adults. I've had a lot of success with helping move through school woundings and stuff. A lot of that horrible stuff, and like with children with ADHD, they say that by the time they're age 10 or something, they've been told know 20,000 more times than an average child or something, you know, like, um, so there's massive patterns there to change, but there's something about, well, I think being held in the circle, I always start with a circle, cast a circle, being held in that sacred space where you feel safe, and in the sand with me, there's no mistakes, no judgment, and you know, we're here to play, you know, and from that place, we'll just see what evolves, really. But from somebody picking up a rake and like one person standing in the middle and having a string attached, and the other person walks around to make a circle. When I watch people do that, I can see how people do life. And so I just see patterns. It's just incredible. I never really knew. I'm getting to learn more about myself and what I know, and how, well, I still don't really know how I know it. It's intuitive. And that's one thing about me with all of this. I've, done one teacher aide certificate. I've done a couple of, obviously courses over the years over autism, but with being a teacher aide, it's only just been included that we have personal development. It's always been for teachers and not teacher aides, so and then I've chosen to just go with who speaks to me, and the rest of it is intuitive. And so art therapy is a lot that I pick up on as well, just children drawing, creating, and so that's the same piece in the sand. So yeah, I just love, I observe, I observe. I just hold the space for the child, the adult, to just bring through, like one of the first pieces I did with a woman who is dyslexic, we just drew the infinity loop, and then I gave her the rake to draw a koru, a fern. And when, as soon as I handed her the rake, she just burst into tears, and she just said to me, "I can't." And I was like really surprised, and I said, "Why?" And she said, "I can't because I was told that I can't draw, and my mum would take my colouring pencils off me for drawing outside of the lines," and just all this stuff came out, and I was just standing there thinking, holy moly, yeah. And I worked about 4 different times with that woman, and then we did a big piece for her husband, and she wrote the words "medicine man" in big letters, and came back to me to check how it was spelt and things, because obviously, being dyslexic, the spelling piece was a big piece. But she was so proud of herself when she did that, as a beautiful gift for him. And that pride was just palpable, and I just see how she has grown and grown in that space now, and suddenly that she realized that she is creative, because of course, particularly dyslexic people are very creative, and they but it's the same thing, that schooling stuff, is how I see it. And so just letting them show that they can be, and move through that in the sand. It's I don't have the answers, but like I see, and I did this quite a few years ago, from an energetic perspective. I drew a big circle, and I drew all the numbers around the right way. Then I flipped them around, so they went clockwise around, just 1 to 10 or 1 to 9, and then I flicked them around and then wrote them backwards, 1 to 9, but anti-clockwise. And I saw them coming through. So it's funny, like, that's why I'm saying it, because of what's behind me. It's like the stratosphere. So imagine the numbers on the top of the wheel there, and then they're flipped underneath, but going clockwise, anti-clockwise. And it just felt like a really important piece to support our children who are coming through, who are writing all these letters and numbers back to front, and that they're not wrong. They're actually bringing through something completely different. It's not even, in my personal opinion, a number. Like it's a light code. It's something completely different to like to what it is. And so like when I did that, that was really my intention, was to be able to bring that support through for children. And sometimes I write on the sand, can you read backwards, you know?
Mm.
um, and I carry a piece of paper in my wallet that says that, can you read backwards? And sometimes I'll just show a particular child, and because most of them can,
Mm.
and then they realize, oh my god, I've got the superpower that I didn't even know I had, and like that, right? In a world where it feels like you can't do this and you can't do that, and I don't understand this, and I get told if I do that, and blah 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 blah, and to have somebody suddenly go, can you read backwards? Yes, I can. Like, wow.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah, I love that. Just, yeah, all these beautiful ways of mm, embracing and awakening to the ability to see things from different perspectives and do things differently, perhaps, and have it not be wrong.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a
Exactly
really,
right. Mm.
yeah,
Mm.
really beautiful. Mm.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So
yeah.
thank you so much for coming on and sharing tonight. It's been joyful. And if you're interested in learning more about Aiyanna, we will put her links in the description box. And yeah, check it out, because she's a powerful creator, and I think has an amazing gift of showing other people that they are too. So yeah, it's no small thing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mm. Yeah, take care and bye everyone. And we'll see you next time on the Ananda Rose Show and the Neurodiversity Controversy segment. So big love.